Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. So looking forward to this one. Trying to answer some of the dang questions everybody has these days. What the heck is wrong with quail? We got somebody who can offer up a few answers, some suggestions, and hopefully a few hunting tips for the folks who are still out there chasing bobwhites. He knows his stuff. He's from Quail Forever. His name is Tim Caughran, and he is one of the gurus in that world. So that's the gist of most of the Upland Nation podcast this week. Of course, we got something for everybody. We'll talk about your training goals, and maybe those will become suggestions for other listeners as well. We'll take a look at an alternative pheasant hunting destination. And a question this week that I will answer on some alternative sources if you're shopping for a puppy. It's that time of year, and if you're not this year, maybe next year. Everybody's kind of entertaining that. Sometimes it's a long process. Around here, it's a 3 or 4 year process of negotiation, and then fitting that new dog into the kind of the string in the right place chronologically. You too? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes you're lucky. That all prompted by a visit I just had with a friend from another dog club a long while back, and we're getting back together. Hey, we're going to go fishing. Hopefully real soon. But while we were in the backyard having a beer or two, his new 3-month-old short hair was having a great time with his 3-year-old short hair. It was fun to watch, and I got the itch again. So, honey, watch out. Around here, it's all a 3.5-year-old wire hair and keeping him in shape and working on steadiness to wing shot and fall. Flick is doing pretty good at that. It's already warm enough around here that we're starting our days early, crack of dawn early, so that we can get in enough miles. It's a little bit tough for, I'm not a night owl, I'm not a morning person. I'm pretty good for that sweet spot between 10 and about 2. But for the dog and for the sport, I'm getting up a lot earlier than usual. Anyone else doing the same thing? If you're in the Southwest, you've been up against it for a while. Even the Midwest, upper Midwest, it's the humidity. It's not the heat, as they say. Another thing I've just finished, I know it'll change, but you got to start somewhere, like the Cheshire Cat said. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Well, I've got the road at least graded and graveled. We haven't put the pavement on yet, but laid out a whole season's worth of hunting trips. You put it in early, you get it on the kitchen calendar, and all of a sudden it's better than, better than a written contract in some relationships. We'll see. I'm eagerly awaiting my spouse-issued hall pass, and we'll keep you posted there. Lots of western chucker hunting on the agenda, but some other things as well, including Montana. Anybody else headed that way? Let's get in touch. I'm headed for Lewistown and maybe the Charles Russell Refuge. Glad to trade some notes with you, so ring me or drop me a note or talk to me through the Facebook pages, all of the above. And speaking of talking and sharing, let's see here. Let's go to the Facebook pages, including the Wing Shooting USA Facebook page. I asked a question that prompted some more thought on my part, and maybe it'll do the same for you. I asked what your training goal was for the summer and got some fascinating responses there. Let's share some of those, and maybe they'll inspire or motivate you as well. Mike Harris says he's aiming for a Prize 1 utility in August. That's in the NAVDA testing system. And then, the 2-day German VGP test in August as well. Man, that's going to be a big month for everybody over there. Good luck on that. And keep us posted, Mike. Erica and Mike Carr are going fly fishing. They say their GSPs naturally point back and retrieve. Hey, Where can I find a couple of those, but with a beard and eyebrows? Dave DeSmither is keeping everybody in shape. You know, that is number one. And Paul Finsner is working on a natural ability test and rehabilitating Sadie. She's got a broken foot. Nick Spurlock, thank you. That is one beautiful Brock d'Auvergne, poised, continental tail, poised in a field that may as well be bracken in the English moors. That's what it looks like, but except for those big conifers in the background in the mountain range. He's working on building confidence in his new Brock and extending the range. You know, that's an interesting challenge with a lot of those old French breeds. I've seen it before, hunted with 3 or 4 of those breeds. And yeah, Nick, I know exactly what you mean. But, you know, you can probably extend a range better, easier than you can probably shorten a range. All right, and Chris Wright says they're working on being more comfortable with gunfire and water retrieves. Big setback in the water. So we're working through it. Good luck on that, Chris. And then finally, Nathan Meek says, overcome retrieving issues. The pup was spurred by a rooster and now is hesitant at times to pick up birds. That is going to be an interesting one. Good luck to you. And I just got to shout out one more time to Nick Spurlock. Man, you are a glutton for punishment, Nick. 12-week-old, 3 Devils, German wire-haired pointer. Yeah. So, that's right. We're like distant cousins, Nick, as a result of that. Great looking dog, of course. Lots of white on the front end, sitting in the passenger seat riding shotgun already, but that's the way 3 Devils dogs do it. You know, if they could fasten their seatbelt, they'd get behind the wheel. Good luck to you, Nick. You have got all 3 of your hands full there. You know, the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by Sage and Breaker Gun Care products. They're crafted at the highest caliber, and man, are they handy. I've got just about one of everything that Fred Bohm makes and distributes. The things that are always in my truck vault are the CLP, that's the cleaning, lubrication, and what is the protection? CLP, cleaning, lubrication, and protection. It's a spray-on. It's, we all have one of those. This one has some interesting aspects to it, including making your gun a little bit less magnetic. I know that sounds wacky, but what it does is it means that less dust, less dirt, less of that stuff that is attracted by static electricity ends up on your barrel, in your action, et cetera, et cetera. So take a look. Get on the mailing list at sageandbreaker.com. And if you're looking for lightly used pro-level gear at entry-level prices, man, we are seeing a rush on electric collars, GPS collars, and bird launchers. If you got a bird launcher you're not using, why don't you sell it at uplandnationdeals.com? Lots of stuff like that in demand right now. And if you're looking for something in that world and you don't want to pay full retail for a brand new version of it, this is a great way to do it. It's all guaranteed. You decide whether when it arrives you like it or not. Everybody wins. You're helping out a fellow hunter. uplandnationdeals.com. Yeah, so enough talk about that stuff. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. You know, those words fit perfectly when we talk about quail, doesn't it? Nitty-gritty. Tim Caughran is here from Quail Forever to talk about just that. And Tim, number one, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. How you doing?
Glad to be here. Good.
And I am glad to have you. You know, this is a pressing question that we deal with all the time. And I apologize because all of this is, I mean, you live, breathe, and eat this stuff. But for a lot of us, we don't get the important aspects of the whole quail situation. So let's start with your whole backstory and how you ended up where you are, and then conclude that aspect, that chapter with what the heck you're doing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I grew up in a town in southern Illinois, called Shelbyville, Illinois, and big lake there, a lot of Corps of Engineer property, and farm and factory town, really heavy agriculture, kind of South Central Illinois. And I grew up there, and my friends lived out in the country at school. I lived in town, but I would ride the bus home with my friends on Fridays. And back then, I would pack my single shot 410 shotgun that broke down in my backpack. It was everybody knew it. Principal knew it. Teacher knew it. The bus driver knew it, and it was okay back then. Because they understood that. When we rode the bus home on Friday, that was going to be in there because I was going to stay with my buddies and we were going to chase rabbits and quail all weekend. And grew up doing that and loving it. Bought that gun with my paper route money. I made $1 a day, and I saved up. And my mom bought that 410 for me, and still have it today.
Wow.
And it grew up that way, and just grew up loving quail, loving bird dogs, loving beetle dogs. Just quail and rabbits were the thing. And so when I went to college, I got a Bachelor of Science degree from Eastern Illinois University, and I did an internship down at Land Between the Lakes in Kentucky and Tennessee, and just loved it down there. It was beautiful. I was there for about 3 months of that internship, and when I completed that, they had a wildlife apprenticeship program. You become an apprentice for the Forest Service. It was a 2-year program, and they gave you housing and room and board, and right there on site, on the Forest Service property, was all included. And I signed up and did that, and was just loving it, and I was about to finish that up, and my wife I met my wife. She came down from the University of Wisconsin to be an intern, and I chased her back to Wisconsin and got a job as a wildlife technician with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And I was a grassland restoration assistant up at Horicon Marsh, and I was a wildlife technician on the Rock River down by Janesville. I'd work on both positions concurrently, 3 days one place and 2 at the other, and would rotate each week. And was trying to live in the dream. Was just had the best of both worlds, and was working for the DNR and was doing great. And then they discovered chronic wasting disease in their deer herd.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and it was just kind of bad for everything. It sucked the budget out of everything that I was doing for my job, and then in turn, all the wildlife people had to go and start calling the deer herd. They adapted a eradication zone, and we were shooting deer and burning them every day.
Wow.
And it was just because at that time landfills were afraid to take them, people were afraid to eat them. They were developing a testing protocol, and it's just I lasted about 8 months doing that, and it was just too much, honestly. And I had my feelers out. I was looking after 8 months of that, and I had been volunteering with a Pheasants Forever chapter on the weekends, and then doing burning and some of the things I love to do, for what my job used to be before CWD. And they told me that somebody within the organization told me that they were going to start hiring wildlife habitat specialists. They were going to develop this new program and hire 4 people to do it. And I put my name in the hat and got an interview. And I remember my boss at the time, he was the director of field operations, Rick Young. He sat down with me at Perkins there in Madison, Wisconsin. He started telling me all about Pheasants Forever and everything they did and everything they were about. And I said, hey, you just need to stop. I said, I know everything there is to know about Pheasants Forever. I need to know what you want to hear from me so I can have this job on Monday. And he just kind of laughed, and he said, I want you to order breakfast. And I don't know that he even, really asked me that many more questions, but I had the job on Monday. And that was 18 years ago, and still work here. Love it. I was one of the first 4 habitat specialists hired, and then when about 2005, they were going to develop they were going to start a sister branch to the organization called Quail Forever. And man, I perked up pretty fast when I heard that, because I was from Southern Illinois. I grew up shooting quail. We rarely saw a pheasant because I was kind of south of the pheasant line. And man, I talked them into letting me move home and become a regional wildlife biologist for the state of Illinois, and it was great. And I started chapters all over Southern Illinois, and I spread out into the south and southeast portion of the country. And overall, over the years, I started nearly 100 Quail Forever chapters over the course of about 10 years, and got to become a field manager and supervise the other regional wildlife biologists and regional reps and chapter service reps, and then eventually the director of field operations for Quail Forever when Jim Woolley, who had that job, retired. And just recently, we've been growing Quail Forever so much in the South and Southeast and Midwest that we kind of restructured our our organization and divided responsibilities. But you no longer let one person be the director of field operations for Quail Forever anymore, because we've put about 115 biologists in the quail range.
Wow.
And it's spread it out from east to west, and a lot of them are primarily in the bobwhite range, but we got some out west too, and New Mexico and Arizona, and doing work on western quail too. So I was recently just named the director of conservation operations for the South region, which is about 15 states throughout the South and Southeast, from Virginia to Texas.
Pretty much classic bobwhite country.
Yep.
You're the guy. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
but yeah, living the dream, getting to do what I love, and getting to work with a bird that I really appreciate and enjoy chasing with my dogs.
well, good, because that's, that's why we're all here, and it's got to be kind of nice to kind of narrow your focus a little bit. For years, number one, I've said to your big boss, Howard Vincent, someday in retirement, I'm going to come back and work for you guys for the same reasons I think you were thinking about. And then, of course, miss Jim Woolley a lot. He got me my first speaking gig at a Pheasant Fest many years ago.
He's a great guy.
For the sake of discussion today, we're going to probably focus primarily on bobwhites. Am I?
Yeah.
That's your wheelhouse, and that's really, that's the one that has the spotlight most of the time, and also it's where I think we need to focus our thinking process. But before we do that, I mean, when it's the same with me. I get this question all the time. You do that all day. Do you actually go out and go hunting after that?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about what you do in your free time.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because if the old cliche is if you find a job you love, you never work a day in your life, and this is incredibly, close to that. But we do, I do have to supervise a lot of people, and there's some days it's not fun, but most of the time I get to put, partnership agreements together with people that love our organization, whether it's a state or federal agency, along with chapter donations and private donations, and we piece all that together, and we put biologists and habitat specialists on the landscapes that are doing technical assistance and habitat work for quail, and it honestly doesn't get old. I mean, it really doesn't. I got to pull myself away from it at times, but then when I do pull myself away from it, I love to grab a shotgun and my dog and go chase birds, and I've gotten to see a lot of things, and gotten to chase a lot of birds in places by doing this job that I otherwise wouldn't get to, and I'm fortunate for that. And when I first started out, I think there were only about 25 or 30 people that worked here. And as we go and grow and build this program and do more habitat work all over the country, I'm fortunate to get to meet a lot of people and have a lot of great people work for me and work for a lot of great people and volunteers that on occasion want to take me out and show me some birds, and I love it, when it happens. I love seeing new places, and I love chasing new coveys of birds. Home is great, but it's pretty nice to see the world and go see things you haven't seen before, and chase birds you haven't seen. So I do. I got a couple of dogs, and I love it.
Okay, so let's get down to it. 3 quick questions for you, Tim, before we decide whether to carry on this conversation any longer. Flushers or pointers?
Well, it's funny you ask, because I have both.
Oh, good for you. You're gonna be okay. Over and under or side by side?
I got an over and under, a couple, 3 of them actually.
Okay. Well, that's only 2 questions. I mean, you covered the other. And tell us about your dogs.
Yeah, so I have a golden retriever, Reggie. He's going to be 10 years old this year, and he's great. And he's actually out of some stock from my my DNR boss in Wisconsin, Brian Benzo, was a wildlife technician up there for over 30 years. And he's an incredible guy. He was, multiple times technician of the year, and he had golden retrievers, and I learned to love them because that's what he had, and I hunted behind them. And it's kind of wild to actually have a dog right now that's out of the stock of one of his dogs.
Oh, I bet.
And it's it's pretty wild. He's got some pups right now, and it's hard not to want one. But I got 2 dogs right now, and that's my limit. I've learned that.
Yeah, we talked earlier before you came on board about the process of getting permission to add a dog to the string, and sometimes it's a multi-year process around here.
Yeah, same here. But yeah, so I have Reggie the golden retriever, and he's my flushing dog, and we hunt a lot of. We hunt waterfowl and we hunt pheasants, and I hunt quail with him too. It's just different. And then I have an English pointer. Got her a couple years ago from my friend Dave Jenkins here in Southern Illinois, and she is a muscle with a nose. It's definitely different. That golden retriever is about 85% a human being, and that dog is the most social animal you could ever have. But the English pointer is I wouldn't say it's all business, but it's all drive and nose.
Okay.
It's different for sure.
By the way, you're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, the host. That's Tim Caughran. He's with Quail Forever. He honchos the southeast quail effort for them down there, and doing an excellent job of it. But I wrote down that muscle with a nose. If it ends up in a magazine article I write, this is all the credit you're going to get for that. By the way,
that'll work.
It's funny because I hang out primarily with chucker hunters, and all of our dogs are like that. But I go all over the country, and there are a lot of dogs that are just not in the shape that our dogs are, and we're not guilty of neglect or anything. It's just hard to keep a dog in shape like that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's it's funny. My golden, I gotta watch his weight. He'll put weight on, and like the English pointer, I can't put weight on it. Almost in the fall it gets really bad because you put a Garmin collar on that dog, and it doesn't matter if you're quail hunting fence rows or if you're in the Northwoods grouse hunting or what the covered terrain is. That English pointer will run. It'll honestly, that collar tracks them. It'll run 40, 50 miles.
Yeah.
A day of hunting, and you can't, you just honestly, you can't keep weight on that dog. It's just it's just a muscle, but the golden retriever, you feed him over 2 cups of food, and you got to start measuring it and watch yourself. It's just different.
Everybody who needs to deal with it, and I do too during the season, although we've never put in quite that many miles. We're putting in 30, 35. Well, he is.
Yeah.
I found a couple things. The first is egg yolks. They're all fat, so throw those into the pan whenever you can. The other one is, and I love this stuff, I top off Flicks food with a powder called Gainer that you can get at elements-nutrition.com. They're not a sponsor or anything. I'm like you. I'm desperate. The guy who's wasting away by the 3rd or 4th week of the season.
Yeah.
And this stuff does the job. It's incredible. It's powdered fat. And also some other good stuff in there. So there's my one tip of the day. In fact, that should have been a tip for the Handle It segment coming up, but that's all right. So let's get down to it. If you had to nail it to a single state to hunt bobwhite quail, you're the guy. This stuff inside and out. You have secret information. You have access, and none of us have. You have the gun that has been blessed by the Pope, so it never misses. You've obviously got a. Where would you go?
Oh man, I get asked this question a lot, and it's honestly hard for me because I have a lot of favorites. But I think some of the best bobwhite numbers in the country right now can be found in South Georgia.
Yeah.
They just are. I think I saw a quote on Facebook the other day from Clay Sisson. He works at Tall Timbers Quail Research Station, or for them, and he said his quote on Facebook was, "The good old days of quail hunting in Georgia are right now." and that's a bold statement because you constantly hear and see that these numbers are going down for the bobwhite, and they have gone down over time. But pockets where there is good habitat and good things going on, there are good numbers of birds. And where there's good weather and good nesting success, there's a lot of things that play into it. But that South Georgia area right now is rocking. I mean, they got a whole lot of things going right for them, and they got a whole lot of birds. Now, the only thing about that is access is limited. There is Forest Service ground. There's wildlife management areas that the state controls. There's quail focal areas. There is access. There really is. But some of the, a lot of the best access is private. So you either pay to play or, you got to work your way in there somehow. And that's tough because it's, like I said, it's the hotbed right now, I think, for the whole country. But my other favorite my go-to is the state of Kansas because their walk-in access program, the acronym is WEHA.
Yep.
It is the measuring stick for the rest of the country. They got over 1.5 million acres of public walk-in access, and I love that because I live in the state. Illinois is 98% privately owned. We have upland habitat areas here, but you have to put in for a lottery system or a quota hunt to get to hunt on one of them.
Wow.
And if you get drawn, you get one day with 3 of your friends, and that's it. And honestly, I haven't been drawn in 4 years.
That's almost ironic, that, 'cause you could pull all the strings. I mean, you have strings of all sorts.
Sure,
No, I'm
sure.
being sarcastic.
I know what you're saying. Like I do know a lot of people, and I rarely ask, but if I'm invited, I absolutely participate. But it's we buy as much land as we can as an organization, and turn it over to state agencies for public access. We have public access programs that are funded by the Farm Bill that we do, but access is very limited where I live and where I'm from. So I like to go to Kansas because you can open up your Onyx app or get the WEHA public land map, and you don't typically ever have to drive more than 4 or 5 miles in any direction without running into a chunk of public land. And to me, that is really great. Like I love to go out there and just go to different areas every day until I get it out of my system for 4 or 5 days, or that's about all me and the dog can handle.
I know that. In fact, we were talking about that a couple of days ago, and I was giving some advice to somebody about a trip to Montana, but the same holds true for Kansas, my favorite state. I'm like you. There's so much walk in there, and we've done some TV shows there and had a great time. Thanks, Wes Sowards, for your help on that, by the way. But you got to allow a rest day in there for the dog, if nothing else. Not that we couldn't stand to have a rest day every once in a while, anyhow. But you do a long trip like that, you're tearing your dogs to pieces. This is a good breaking point. We're going to get down to the brass tacks coming up in just a moment. But right now, I'm going to give you a quick break. I'm going to pay a few bills, and we're going to have the Handle It segment and where you go to find a good bird dog pup coming up in just a moment. That's Tim Caughran. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Be right back at you, Tim.
All right.
Yeah, so the Upland Nation podcast is made possible in part by Dr. Tim's Performance Dog Food. Have been enjoying the heck out of working with Tim Hunt, the founder of drtims.com, on some great informational videos. In fact, there's one out right now on the best protein sources and why they're important, and also why fat is where it's at. You got to get the right kind of fats in the right proportions in your dog food if you want peak performance, not just on day 1, but on day 4 of the season and day 54 of the season. It's all about fat. Take a look at those videos. You can't miss them. They're everywhere, but they're also at findbirdhuntingspots.com. That's a good place to look for them, or on the Facebook pages. It's all there. It's all in the bag. drtims.com is where you find more information. You get a 30% discount on your first order if you use the code Upland Nation. They'll deliver it to your door just like those other guys. So take a look at DRTIMS. Find a formulation that you like, you think is going to work for your dog, And then make sure you use the code Upland Nation and get 30% off your first order. So we're talking around it. We're talking through it. Got to play with that young short hair a few days ago. It prompted a question from a viewer of the TV show. That's what came to me through the TV show. But anyway, he asks this basic question: where do you start in finding a good bird dog to buy? So that's the topic for our Handle It segment, where all the things I learned the hard way come up so that you don't have to. Of course, you can go on the internet, and that's a good place to start. But before you actually commit, put a deposit down, sign a contract, however that works in your part of the country, here are a few other things you might want to do just to get a feel for what's out there. If you're not a member of your local dog training club, go out and join. Even if you don't have your dog yet, great place to kind of get a feel for all of it, understand the world of bird hunting and bird dogs, dog training and testing. Attend the meetings, go to the training sessions, help out, of course, wherever you can. That'll get you in touch with the local owners and breeders who, believe me, will have plenty of opinions on who's breeding good dogs. Ask them where they got their dogs. Go to the hunt tests or the field trials if you're so inclined, and meet some of the breeder trainers there. Talk to the folks who are organizing those. Be sensitive. They're all volunteers, and it's a really busy day. But ask around. That's a good chance to see these dogs in action and find out who's doing what in that world. And then remember, most national groups have a database with their hunt test or their field trial results. Sometimes you have to dig deep, but sometimes they're real easy to find. So if you're looking for a particular breed and you're looking for a particular breeder, it's all right there in black and white on your electronic page. That's the Handle It segment, brought to you in part by HappyJackInc.com, where you can find all the dog remedies you need for parasites, dog health, and everything else. HappyJackInc.com. And if I didn't bore you yet, hopefully Tim Caughran is still on the line from Quail Forever. Tim, did I put you to sleep there?
Nope, you did, man.
Good.
Still here.
Good. Any of that make any sense to you, or do you just wait until somebody hand delivers a puppy on a silver platter?
Oh no, you're right. I've gotten dogs through friends, and I don't know. I always I like to kind of make my own assessment of things and then pick, I'm not saying you can't find great dogs on the internet. I'm sure you can. I kind of like to see things firsthand and get a feel for them, and then make a decision, and that's what I've always done. And I think a field trial club, and I think that absolutely is a place to meet dog people and dog breeders and get to really see a lot of different variety of animals and bloodlines and everything you need to do to make a really good educated decision.
There's nothing like boots on the ground or paws on the ground to help you in that regard. Absolutely. And while it may not be your cup of tea, if it's a, field trial, it's a different vibe than a hunt test or a training day, but they all have something to offer if you know what to look for there. Tim, You're with Quail Forever. You're now in charge of basically the hotbed of bobwhite quail hunting, that southeastern United States and all of that. But let's start at the top here. And this is a question I get all the time, and that's why you and I are talking today. What the heck is the current state of affairs with bobwhite quail? Population dynamics, trending, that sort of thing. Bring us up to speed.
Yes, over the last 30 years, they've trended downward, and a lot of that's habitat loss and incredibly clean agriculture and lack of management on timber stands. All the things that put sunshine on the ground and make early successional habitat, which is what they love. But saying that, there have been successes out there, and we're making a bunch as an organization. Where we put biologists and habitat specialists on the ground to work with landowners, provide technical assistance, get them enrolled in programs, or just help them with management plans to make habitat. You see good numbers of birds. So when we have successes like the CP33 program, which is the Bobwhite buffers and field border program, where we have areas where a lot of those go into enrollment and into the ground, we see rebound of quail numbers. And I was talking about South Georgia earlier, being a real hot spot, some of the best numbers in the country right now. When that's South Georgia, there's a lot of quail plantations there. There's a lot of management. The state has a Bobwhite Quail Initiative, BQI, in Georgia. It's run by the DNR. That's second to none, and they put a lot of hard work and effort into their quail focal areas and their staff, and they're doing a lot of things right, and they're getting a really good response to it. And they got really great numbers there. And then, you move over to the state of Texas, and when they get rainfall and they have good vegetation, they have great numbers. Bird numbers were down there, 10 years ago, pretty bad, because they had such a long drought for years, and then when it rained, they had 30-year high numbers for a couple of years in a row, because they had that habitat back, and the birds came with it. And that's the thing about quail, is they're prolific. They go up and down really quickly. When things are bad, they die and the numbers go down. But when they're good, they go up just as fast. So when we see good weather and we see good habitat, we see good bird numbers. And I guess the takeaway for me is that we can fix it. It doesn't matter if it's gone down. Doesn't even matter what the state of affairs is right now. If we do good things, we can have good numbers again. And I tell people, as much as we're restoring the habitat, we're trying to restore the hope, because that can drive it and get people to do more of the right things, and it can bring them back to where we want them again.
Oh, I can't agree more. I think it's all of those things in more. But just for the record, a biologist who specializes in this kind of thing, let's get it straight here. Mm-hmm. Rain brings quail in the Southwest. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll call Texas the Southwest. Sure. They like to think they are the be all and end all, but there are other states. But what is it about rain?
Well, like I went to Arizona this year. I've gone the last 2 years, and when they get rain in that desert landscape, if you will, they get vegetation. And when they get that vegetation, it provides everything that the quail want, from everything from cover to brooding cover to nesting cover. And they don't really need winter cover in that part of the world. So all they need is some rain and some vegetation, and then their numbers go way up. I was out there north of Phoenix this year, and the amount of Gambel's quail it was unbelievable. They had record numbers. They had counts that were higher. They did bird counts in the spring and fall, and they had counts that were, this fall, the bird count out there was the highest it had been in over 20 years. And that was because they had some moisture in that part of the world. Now down in the south end of the state, they didn't, and and the Merns numbers weren't good
down to Patagonia and that area. Yeah,
they just they struggled, but the Gambel's numbers were phenomenal.
So the follow-up question is, what was the latitude and longitude there?
Well,
no,
I can tell you,
kids, don't try that at home.
I flew into Phoenix.
Yeah,
and I got a rental car and I went north. I can tell you that.
Okay,
but
thank you.
Not very far north, and I was on public land.
I love it, and it's funny. For years and years on my TV show, we've tried to make an Arizona quail show, and we'll have it all set up. In January we'll have it set up for next January, and in July the guide or the outfitter will call and say, "We did. It never rained. Don't bother." And then worse, we'll say, "Oh, to hell with that," and we'll go somewhere else instead. And then they'll call and say, "It rained a lot. You should have been here." So I feel. But what about I can look out this window and count a half dozen valley quail as we speak. Can't shoot them, or I'd be in she'd change the locks on the door. But What about the bug thing? You know, the growth that you're describing, obviously water dependent, but that also
Yeah.
creates that incredible protein
Yep.
biomass for chicks, doesn't it?
Yep. Yeah. And those chicks, they absolutely have to have bugs for the first, 3 to 4 weeks of their life. And the reason being is those bugs provide the amino acids that they
Oh,
have to survive when they're that young. There's no substitute.
yeah.
They
You
just
know,
they
that's why so many vegetarians look so pale and skinny. They're not getting the right. They're not getting the meat.
not just the amino acids. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like that. But in all honesty, like those chicks, they have to have those, and that's why as an organization we've really been tied into the pollinator program because not only is it outstanding for the bees and the butterflies that this world needs and depends on for, they say one in every 3 or 4 bites of food is dependent on a pollinator of some type, and we got to be doing things that keep them around and keep their numbers good. But for us as an organization, that program, those seed mixes and varieties, the wildflowers in with the native grasses, like they make bugs. And it's a really great overlap and habitat creator for what we're trying to target with pheasant and quail and other wildlife.
You know,
It's a great bug maker, it's a great brood maker, and it makes birds.
I'll never forget getting in the shuttle. I shared a taxi is what it was with a gal one early morning leaving Pheasant Fest. We were both headed to the airport. So I said, "Well, what were you doing at Pheasant Fest?" And she says, "Oh, I'm with I thought it was a Wildlife Federation. I don't remember now, but it was we were there to talk about pollinators."
Yeah,
And I thought, "What?" But we had a
yeah.
long drive to the airport, so
Oh, yeah.
she explained it all to me, and it was a forehead slapping moment. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you know, I'm so glad you're involved in that stuff. Plus, it makes the prairie a little prettier too.
It does, It's when we first got into it. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I was skeptical. I thought, and we hired our first, like being butterfly coordinator or monarch coordinator, and I thought this is crazy,
Well,
and
that's
then
right out of the summer of love, you know,
I thought,
dude.
what are we doing, And then, as I stuck my head in and began to learn more, it really makes a lot of sense. And what, we need to attract a bigger audience to the things we love to keep the traditions that we love around. So if we can attract bee and butterfly people and beekeepers and we have great relationships with Illinois Department or departments of transportation all around the country, not just
Sure,
Illinois. We got a
yeah.
great one here, but because they're starting to manage their right of ways for monarchs and bees, and it's linear habitat for quail and other wildlife, and it's in power companies too. It's they have a lot of right of ways, whether it be for power lines or pipelines or around solar panels or whatever it may be. Those things are gonna happen and go in the ground, and I know there's controversy that comes with that, but from our standpoint, if it's going into place and there's land there that can be used to create habitat, we're all for it. And if you can plant pollinator habitat, which is brood growing bird habitat, around or underneath or where those things are taking place, when we're all for it because we want as much habitat on the landscape as possible so we can have as many birds as possible.
When I was working in politics, the phrase "politics makes for strange bedfellows" was kind of an
Mm.
axiom, you know. And we would team up with people you'd think were our arch enemies, but for the greater good.
Mhm.
Um, Ultimately, though, the team ups were just so disgusting, I got out of that business. But biology makes for strange bedfellows too, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. It's crazy. The amount of partners we have in partnership agreements and all the different varieties of people and partners involved with them is is mind blowing at times. It's wild how many different people and partners we have right now to get the things done that we love.
But like you said, you look at it and you think, well, they control a 400-mile strip that may be 300 yards wide, but it
Mhm.
goes the length of the state
Yeah. Yep.
as a right of way.
Yeah, we got Route 66, runs through Illinois here, goes from St. Louis to Chicago basically, and we paired with the Department of Transportation here to create the Habitat Highway, and we did, it equated to thousands of acres by putting pollinator habitat up both sides of that road, the length of the state, just like you said.
Wow. And that brings back the great Bobby Troop song, Route 66. I won't sing it, I promise. I know the chord changes. Man, you just got another what? 4 states to go through, from St. Louis to L.A.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
here's another one. Everybody asks this, and let me just paint the picture.
Hmm.
Because I wrote an essay on kind of the history of ringneck pheasants in the United States.
Hmm.
They were introduced, they were planted, and
Correct.
they're granted they're still planted in many places, but those first plants ultimately in the right place worked. I mean,
Yes.
Judge Denny in Albany, Oregon, put 60
Mm.
birds out, and they survived. And then they came over to my side of the mountains, and then they kept going east while other people were putting them in Redfield, South Dakota. But that was a planted bird. My
Hmm.
nemesis, the sons of bitches called chuckers, they were introduced,
Hmm.
and they, just like every other bird population, they flourish some years, but they've never um, been native to this country. Why
Yep,
can't
that's
we do
correct.
that with bobwhites?
Well, honestly, because the wild genetics, are impossible to create in a pen, and I know that that is controversial statement, but honestly, if we could figure out a way to make it truly work, we as an organization would be doing everything we could to do more of it. But we have found that the habitat has to be there and the birds have to be wild. And, release birds, on an average only have about a 4% survival rate from one year to the next. And that doesn't make good financial sense for us to be
Sure.
promoting or paying for,
I get it.
and
Yeah.
and so we focused on the habitat work, but they just, it's funny because, you talked about chuckers, and man, you hunt those things out in the wild. A wild chucker, they're commonly referred to as the red-legged devil, because they are just tough. They're smart and they're tough and they're just wily as hell, and they'll exhaust you chasing them. But if you go to a game farm and you hunt one that's been raised in a pen, it's honestly like a farm chicken.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have any of that in its system, and people that have never hunted them wild out west, but they might hunt them at game farms in the Midwest. They in their head they think they're dumb, and they're going to go out west and they're going to kill a tailgate full of them, and then they go out there and they get they get their ego handed to them, when they go out and try to chase them, because they will literally wear you out and outsmart you unless you're on top of your game or have experience with it.
Yeah, and all of that makes sense. That's Tim
Yeah.
Caughran of Quail Forever. I'm Scott Linden. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. Um, I get all of that. Um, and we see it in the trout and the salmon world as well. It's,
Mhm. Yeah.
you cannot
Very.
introduce hatchery fish and expect them to be the same in any way.
Yeah.
But somebody was out there trapping and transplanting, if you want to call it
Yeah.
that, chuckers
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
huns for that matter,
Oh yeah.
turkeys and pheasants, and taking that wild stock and opening the boxes and turning them loose in another location. Has that ever been attempted with bobwhites?
Yeah. So the tall I mentioned Tall Timbers earlier. The
Sure.
Tall
Yeah.
Timbers Quail Research Station is kind of the cutting edge, uh, science and research center station, if you will, for bobwhite quail. And they have a game bird, uh, a wild. a wild bird translocation program,
Hmm.
and they specialize in it. And I would say out of all the institutions in the country, they are head and shoulders above everybody else at it. And they've put a lot of years of monitoring and research into figuring out how to get it right. And now they specialize in doing that. They primarily do it for private plantations because it is very expensive to do. And but we are seeing some states start to take notice. Like there's a project up in New Jersey where Tall Timbers works with them to trap and translocate wild birds, and I think it's going pretty good, as well as it can go in a state that far north. And then right now in the state of Pennsylvania, so bobwhite quail were extirpated in Pennsylvania. They deemed that they no longer had any in the state, not a single one. And that's a story that's hard for us to swallow and not want to correct. So we currently are working with the Letterkenny Army Depot out there. We have a habitat team that works on site with the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and what they're doing is they're going to spend 3 years, and they're going to try to get that habitat on that site as perfect as they can, because if you don't have good enough, habitat to support a wild population, you're not going to just dump one on the ground and have it survive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're working on that habitat for 3 years right now. I think we're about 2 years into it, and after year three, they're gonna work with Tall Timbers or some entity to translocate wild birds in there, and get a population going again in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania did a similar program with pheasants.
Yeah, yeah.
Our chapters had areas out there. I think there's 8 or 12 areas where they did habitat work for a few years, and then our habitat specialist trapped birds out in South Dakota and transported them across. And that population on those areas where they did that has gotten high enough now to where they're actually issuing permits to kids out there to hunt them.
I love it, and that is a great story in and of itself. I'm glad to hear that that effort is being done. Period.
Mhm.
I understand there's the quail and the egg part of it, where you can't just drop them down in a parking lot. You got to have you got to have the right stuff,
Yeah.
and I also understand it's more complicated than that. Among the other things affecting quail populations or game bird populations in general, Tim. I see predators, both avian and ground-based predators. But what are the other biggest threats to a quail population?
I mean, the big things are, I mean, the first one's lack of habitat,
Yeah.
and then weather. It can have a rough effect on them, good and bad. Like I said, when it's bad, they go down. When it's good, they go up fast too. But the biggest things we see are habitat and weather. We always get the predator questions, and I understand that. I understand that that people aren't killing predators at the rate they used to when pelts and things were of greater value and lots of people were trapping and coon hunting and things like that. But honestly, when it comes to predators, I always say, don't shoot them to loot them. Put more habitat on the ground, so there's enough for everything. Because I mean, predator control. I don't fault anybody for doing it on their own property. I really don't. But um, predator control in general, you're just displacing them, and they generally can regulate their own population to the carrying capacity of the property. I mean, they'll increase their brood or litter size, whatever they got to do. They're prolific, and we don't, as an organization, spend money on predator
Right.
control just because the minute you quit doing it, the second you let up, it goes right back to where it was.
It
And
does. We
you
live it
know,
here every day with coyotes. You could
yeah,
shoot all the
yeah,
coyotes within a square mile, and then
yep. They just implode their litter and they're back
yeah,
to where they were.
exactly, and they move our way. Mountain lions are the same way. You shoot one, and two come in.
Yeah, and
So
there's a balance too. I always try to tell a lot of guys. I have trail cam footage of coyotes that are walking by the camera with a raccoon or a possum in their mouth.
Yeah.
And it's like, you shoot the coyote, the coons go up, and honestly, like the raccoons and the possums are egg eaters and nest predators. Where the coyote's a horrible birder, honestly. Not saying he won't eat one, he absolutely will. But if he's killing a dozen possums and raccoons a year, you might not want to be shooting at him, But
Well,
like I said, it's a balance.
Speaking of tall timbers, and then our friends in Texas doing a lot of the same kind of research, they really opened my eyes to some of the other less well known nest robbers. For example, snakes and rats and things like that. We never think about those, do we?
Oh yeah, you don't, because you don't see them. They keep a low profile, but yeah, there've been a lot of studies done. And like I said, not to keep mentioning tall timbers, but they've done a ton of research and monitoring, and they can tell you the things that they're so good at the translocation program, because they are analyzing every outside factor and figuring out how to make it work, because it is incredibly technical. It's really easy to screw it up, but they just keep tweaking that and trying to get it as good as they can. But when I was down there, I've toured that place a number of times. They're a really good partner of ours, and armadillos and cotton rats and black rat snakes and all that stuff, is robbing nests and eating eggs, and you just don't know it because it's generally nocturnal.
Yeah.
And you don't see it out there, so you don't really realize that a lot of what you think are your main predators aren't your main predators, because there's other ones that are getting them before they even hatch.
Okay, but we're the primary. We're the top of the food chain. We're the predator that the quail couldn't care less about, unless we have a decent English pointer. So, Tim Caughran of Quail Forever, you study these birds inside and out. Give me a couple quail hunting tips that I'll keep secret. Nobody else will know them.
Yeah. Go to Kansas.
Yeah.
Go to Kansas, and I like to look at that that WeHa map.
Yeah.
Or I use OnNext a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a game changer, because you got everything at your fingertips, and you can see where the boundaries are, and you can see where you are, and make sure everything's good. But what I like to do, man, is I like to go out there, and I like to look at a map, and I like to find a drainage, an area with some moisture that's got some good linear habitat, and it'll have some early successional habitat, some weeds is what I'm trying to say there. And I like to find chunks of that you can't see from the road.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to do a windshield tour and say, oh man, that looks great, and they jump out and they hunt it. But if you can look at those maps, and you can find areas that are over a hill or down low that you cannot see from the road, but you can see them on that map, and once you find a couple of good ones, you'll start to know what you're looking for on that map. And then I'll open that WeHa book or that OnNext app, and I will specifically look for that. And if you get good at finding that, it's amazing how many more birds are in areas like that than are in the stuff that looks good from the road.
I can't echo that any louder than you just explained it, Tim, but I will add to it. I advise everybody on those walk-in properties to don't park the moment you find the parking place. Do a circle of a recon and find the back door. A lot of times, that is number one. Nobody else is going in that way. Number two, you might get a better shot at, pardon the pun, at all the stuff that's in there. So look for that back door. And then one bit of warning, and I know this is out west. This is a real problem. I don't know if you experience it as well with that online mapping program whose name I will not say. The states have to report their walk-in areas every year to those guys before they get on the map for that year. And the states are pretty lackluster about staying current on that stuff. I did a couple experiments in Oregon, and the stuff that was 2 years old was what they thought was current. So if you're looking at walk-in areas just on that app, cross-check it against the up-to-date atlas for that state, or somebody might come out of their barn with a shotgun loaded with two-aught buck, wondering what you're doing with their bull in the pasture there.
Yep, you are very correct, And it's funny, I had a friend who works here, and we were in South Dakota one time, and he was from Minnesota near South Dakota, and he said we went out, we were hunting public land in South Dakota, and he said, I'll show you a little trick. And he pulls up this big public wildlife area, and he gets out and he slams the truck door as hard as he can. And I'll bet there were 50 birds got up and flew, within 100 yards of the parking lot, and flew out and land over on the other side of land on the other side of the partial. And then he drove around to the other side of the property, parked, and then quietly walked with his dog on a lead about 400 yards ahead and tucked in that end of the wildlife area and smacked a couple of birds within 5 minutes.
Well, now that one was worth listening to the whole other discussion we've been having right there. I love that tip.
Oh,
No, this has been a wonderful discussion. I've still got way more to talk about. We'll probably have to pick it up at another time, but you're a wealth of information. Tim Caughran is with Quail Forever. He's now in charge of all the hot states for bobwhites down there, inside and out. If you're not familiar with Quail Forever, boy, I remember the days when it became what it is, and luckily Quail Forever stepped in and filled the void. But great organization, great people doing excellent work. We'll do this again because I have just as many more questions to ask you about what you're doing. But in the meanwhile, thanks so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Absolutely. I really, really appreciate it. And for everybody listening out there, if they just go to quailforever.org and check us out if you haven't before. And there's all kinds of things on there. You can click on where to find a biologist close to you. They provide all their service free of charge. That's what we do. And because of our great partners to help us pay for that program. But check us out. We want to help you help birds, and buy a membership if you would. We appreciate the support.
There you go. Thanks again. See ya.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Don't you go away, because we got a whole lot more to talk about, including a public access strategy in a less commonly regarded pheasant state. How's that for a description without describing something? This part of the Upland Nation podcast brought to you by my friends Manning and Joe Exum at Happy Jack. Learn more about all their products at happyjackinc.com. Happy Jack was Joe's dad's prized beagle. Everybody wanted to breed their bitch to his stock, and it's no wonder he got so happy. But it's flea season, and if your dog is unhappy about the scratching and the itching and all of that, and you're worried about it, and you're also worried about the toxicity of all the stuff that you can buy and put on your dog or in your dog, you might consider going to the source and using a Happy Jack flea beacon. Non-toxic. It's a simple little tray with a light over it that attracts those fleas to the light. They hop in, they get in the tray, they can't get out again. It's a miracle product, highly regarded. I can't make that clear enough. I love mine. I don't need to use them near as much as people in the Midwest and the South, but check out the Happy Jack flea beacon, happyjackinc.com. Yeah, this land is your land, or at least a whole bunch of it is, especially as we get out to the west, southwest, the northwest. And you also know that I love South Dakota. They build themselves as the pheasant capital of the world. There's a lot of ringnecks out there, but there are some other places you might investigate if you're sick and tired of the mob scene, or they have a tough year, or you're just closer to North Dakota. It's a lot more laid back, which means there aren't near as many, for example, hunting lodges. But I've found over the years that the population there, the folks especially in the smaller towns, love to have hunters out there. And as I've said before, hunting is economic development in a lot of those towns, especially in a state like North Dakota. Some good things going for it. Number one, they do have a walk-in program that is just as good from an administrative standpoint. Maybe not quite as many acres as some other states, but easy to access. And if you're so inclined and you feel okay about it, if private land isn't posted, then you don't even need to ask permission to hunt. So it's kind of on the landowner's nickel to tell you to stay away if that's what they want. Both of those things together are most prevalent in south central North Dakota. Good to look at. Get on their website and take a look at the walk-in access, the public land, especially the waterfowl production areas. You know how I feel about those for upland birds as well, all over central North Dakota. And all of that good stuff that makes ducks and geese, like thick cattails and grass surrounding wetlands, often harbor roosters. And if you get on the knobs, the higher land in that country, you never know, you might just jump a sharp-tailed grouse. Whew, well, I'm psyched already. I'm not going that far this fall, but I'm going far enough to get into both of those in similar places, and I hope you are too. Hey, you know, it's time for you to start sharing with me as well. If you've got a spot you think can handle the pressure, it can be generalized. Drop me a note at scottlindonoutdoors@gmail.com. Let's share it with some of your fellow hunters, particularly new folks who need a little bit of a boost. They got their own bootstraps, I understand that, but sometimes we can help them pull them up. So drop me a line or private message me at any of the Facebook pages. Yeah, speaking of that kind of thing, this part of the show brought to you by FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. Always new material every week to help you find places to hunt just like that. And I thank you in advance for visiting and for listening today. Thanks Tim Caughran of Quail Forever for the insights that I doubt you're getting anywhere else, everybody. You want to talk? Check out the Wing Shooting USA and the Upland Nation Facebook pages. Please tell your friends. Please rate us at Apple Podcasts. Thank you in advance for that. And you know they are a part of our lives, a big part. So maybe you agree with author Oren Pamuk, who says dogs do speak, but only to those who know how to listen. Speaking of listening, thanks for doing it. I'm Scott Linden. See you in the field.